Imagine yourself caught in the middle of a heated argument. Your heart is pounding, every word feels like a weapon, and every sentence a small battle. You're carefully shaping your next line, determined to prove your point, but the person across from you is doing exactly the same. Neither of you is really listening. Both are simply waiting for the next chance to strike back. Then Nietzsche steps in. He doesn't choose sides or tell you what to say. Instead, he leans in and whispers something deeply unsettling. You've already lost. What could that mean? You're defending yourself, standing your ground. How could that be defeat? Because, according to Nietzsche, the very moment you engage in this kind of fight, you've already given up your true power. He believed that genuine strength doesn't come from the urge to win an argument, but from something far more subtle and unexpected. So what is this hidden form of power? And why does silence often speak louder than words? Most people assume that power lies in winning debates, proving others wrong, and dominating conversations. But Nietzsche had a completely different idea. To him, power wasn't about words. It was about control. Think about it. Why do people argue? Anyone who's ever been pulled into a heated exchange knows how fast things spiral out of control. Yet few stop to ask what drives it in the first place. Nietzsche would say that most arguments aren't really about truth. They're about psychological needs. People argue to protect their egos, to defend their identities. Admitting they might be wrong feels like losing a piece of themselves, so the mind resists it at all costs. According to Nietzsche, many debates have little to do with logic or evidence. They are power struggles disguised as conversations, contests over who gets the last word, who controls the tone, and who forces the other to back down. There's also the influence of the crowd. People often argue not because they truly believe in their ideas, but because they want to appear intelligent, confident, or strong in front of others. Nietzsche saw all of this as weakness. To him, the moment you react emotionally in an argument, you hand control over to someone else. If another person can provoke you, they already have power over you. This idea connects to one of Nietzsche's most misunderstood concepts, the will to power, and his vision of the Übermensch, or Superman. Contrary to popular belief, Nietzsche's will to power wasn't about brute strength or domination. It was about mastering reality through self-control. True power, he argued, doesn't always need to be expressed through words or force. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in the ability not to react at all. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's ideal superior individual, embodies this principle. He is not emotionally reactive like ordinary people. He doesn't argue for the sake of being right or to prove his worth. Instead, he decides carefully when to speak and when to remain silent, because power isn't about endless talking, but about controlling the entire interaction. Picture a meeting. Two people are debating. One is loud and aggressive, determined to prove they're right. The other remains calm, composed, and observant. They listen more than they speak. When they finally do respond, their words shift the whole conversation. Nietzsche would say that it is the calm one, the one who controls emotion, who truly holds the power. Why is strategic silence more powerful than winning an argument? Because when used deliberately, silence isn't a sign of weakness. It's a form of psychological control. Silence forces others to reveal more than they intend. It makes them uncomfortable, unsure, and often leads them to question their own position. That tension becomes your advantage. The Übermensch doesn't remain quiet out of fear. He uses silence as a tool, a pause, a deliberate act of restraint, a well-timed response that shifts the balance of the discussion in his favor. Nietzsche's version of power isn't about endless verbal combat. It's about mastering the battlefield before the first word is spoken. Silence, then, is not the absence of communication. It's a weapon, one wielded by some of history's most brilliant minds to dominate intellectual, business, and even military arenas. For Nietzsche, power was never about loud debates or emotional outbursts. It was about influence, control, and precise restraint. To illustrate this, let's explore 3 legendary figures who embodied this principle in their own domains: Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Miyamoto Musashi. Each of them mastered the art of power through silence, not by retreating from conflict, but by using calmness and strategy to shape the outcome. Socrates, for instance, mastered the art of winning without fighting. He never shouted or insulted his opponents. Instead, he used questioning, the Socratic method, to lead people into exposing their own contradictions. This subtle, psychological technique dismantled arrogance without aggression and remains one of the most powerful intellectual tools in history. Socrates never fought with words the way others did. He didn't yell, argue, or insist that he was right. Instead, he used his mind like a blade, sharp, patient, and deliberate. Through the Socratic method, he asked simple questions that forced people to uncover their own inconsistencies. Imagine an Athenian politician boasting that he is the wisest man in the city. Rather than openly contradicting him, Socrates asks, "What is wisdom?" The politician, eager to show off his intellect, begins defining it. But with each new question Socrates poses, the man's definition begins to crumble. By the end, the politician, once so sure of himself, realizes he doesn't truly understand what he claimed to master. Socrates didn't need to tell people they were wrong. He made them see it on their own. He understood something essential. People rarely accept truth when it's forced upon them. They accept it only when they discover it themselves. This was his version of silent power, guiding others toward realization without confrontation. Instead of wasting energy in shouting matches, he used strategic questioning to turn his opponent's certainty into self-doubt. That's how he maintained control without appearing dominant. This approach echoes through time. Centuries later, a modern visionary would apply the same principle in a completely different arena: business and innovation. His name was Steve Jobs, and his mastery of influence made him one of the most powerful communicators of the modern age. Steve Jobs understood the power of controlled conflict. Unlike Socrates, he didn't avoid arguments altogether. He used them strategically. His leadership at Apple wasn't about debating every small decision, but about shaping the overall vision. Jobs believed that energy should never be wasted on meaningless fights. But when something truly mattered, he was relentless. One of the most famous examples was his clash with the Apple engineering team during the creation of the first iPhone. The engineers wanted to include physical buttons, while Jobs envisioned a sleek, buttonless touchscreen. Rather than forcing his view immediately, he let his team argue, challenge, and express their doubts. He allowed the tension to unfold, but always guided the conversation toward his vision. Eventually, they realized for themselves that a full touchscreen wasn't just possible. It was the future. Jobs didn't need to impose his ideas by force. He made people believe they had reached those ideas on their own. That was his art of persuasion, control disguised as collaboration. Most people argue to defend their egos, to prove they are right. Jobs argued with purpose, to move people toward a shared vision. He wasn't interested in being correct. He wanted to create alignment. That's the true difference between arguing to win and arguing to lead. As Jobs once demonstrated, words without purpose are just noise. The real goal is not to win debates but to inspire action. And that same principle appears far beyond the world of technology, even on the battlefield. Now let's leave philosophy and business behind and step onto the battlefield. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai of Japan, understood a truth that mirrors Nietzsche's ideas. The greatest victory often comes without fighting at all. Musashi won more than 60 duels throughout his life. But his most powerful victories were psychological, not physical. He was a master of manipulating his opponent's minds long before the first strike. His most famous example was the duel against Sasaki Kojiro, a swordsman renowned for his speed and deadly technique. Instead of meeting Kojiro head-on, Musashi used time itself as a weapon. He arrived hours late to the duel, forcing Kojiro to wait under the hot sun, his anger steadily building. By the time Musashi appeared, Kojiro was furious, consumed by emotion and impatience. That was all Musashi needed. When the fight began, Kojiro's rage clouded his focus, and Musashi defeated him with ease. Musashi understood what Nietzsche later described philosophically: when your opponent loses emotional control, they lose the battle before it even begins. True mastery, Musashi believed, lies in controlling yourself so completely that you can control the reactions of others. Silence, patience, and psychological dominance are more powerful than brute force. From the calm questioning of Socrates to the strategic persuasion of Jobs and the disciplined restraint of Musashi, the pattern is clear. Real power belongs to those who stay composed, while others lose themselves to emotion. But what happens when the mind turns against itself? When power is not lost to others, but to one's own doubts? That's where Friedrich Nietzsche himself steps onto the stage. Nietzsche, the man who wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow," was not just a philosopher. He was a man constantly wrestling with his own suffering. His ideas about strength, morality, and the will to power were born from pain, solitude, and physical weakness. He lived much of his life sick and isolated, plagued by migraines, insomnia, and loneliness. Yet from this darkness came some of the most revolutionary thoughts in modern philosophy. Nietzsche believed that struggle, even despair, is not something to avoid, but to transform. Pain, when faced consciously, becomes fuel. It sharpens the will, but society doesn't teach this. Society teaches comfort. It rewards obedience, conformity, and the avoidance of pain. Nietzsche warned that when comfort becomes a culture, strength dies. People stop growing. They stop questioning. They stop becoming. He called the outcome of this decay the last man, a future human who seeks only pleasure, security, and mediocrity. The last man avoids conflict, avoids greatness, and avoids meaning. He smiles all the time, but he has forgotten how to live. Nietzsche's tragedy was that he saw this future coming, and it broke him. He demanded that humanity rise above its herd instinct, but in the end, he stood alone, consumed by his own mind. After Nietzsche's collapse, his words took on a haunting irony. The man who spoke of transcending weakness became a symbol of it, a prophet destroyed by his own intensity. Yet his downfall carried a deeper truth. Even the greatest minds are not immune to the weight of their own ideas. Nietzsche's breakdown wasn't simply madness. It was the inevitable cost of seeing too much, of looking directly into the abyss he had warned others about. If you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. He had stared too long, and it stared back. His story reminds us that visionaries walk a dangerous path. To challenge the foundations of morality, religion, and truth itself is to walk on fire. It demands the kind of courage most people can't comprehend, a courage that burns the soul. But in a strange way, Nietzsche's fall completes his philosophy. He became the ultimate test of his own ideas. Could a man embrace chaos, suffering, and solitude without breaking? His life answered with both yes and no. His mind shattered, but his legacy endured. His words survived to inspire generations who refused to live as the last men. And that is the paradox of greatness. Those who dare to see beyond society's illusions often destroy themselves in the process, but in doing so, they light the path for everyone else. Nietzsche fell, but his fall became a mirror. It shows us what happens when the pursuit of truth becomes more important than safety. So what lessons can we take from Nietzsche, Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Musashi? Across centuries and continents, a single principle emerges. True power is not in shouting, reacting, or proving yourself right. It is in observation, self-control, and knowing when to act. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight. Arguments are rarely about truth. They are about identity, ego, and the need for social validation. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, the backfire effect, and the Dunning-Kruger effect make debates largely futile. We don't listen. We wait for our turn to speak. The moment someone provokes emotion, control is lost. Powerful individuals understand this. They observe without reacting. They choose battles with intention, responding only when it serves a higher purpose. Their silence is not passivity. It is strategy. Their restraint forces others to reveal themselves, creating uncertainty that can be leveraged. Socrates made people realize contradictions without saying they were wrong. Jobs guided his team to embrace a vision without imposing it. Musashi defeated opponents by manipulating emotion before combat began. And Nietzsche taught that self-mastery is the ultimate form of influence, that controlling your own reactions is more powerful than dominating others. The common thread: control, patience, and strategic action always outweigh brute force or heated words. The strongest minds shape reality not by reacting impulsively, but by mastering the interplay between silence, observation, and precision. Imagine waking up one day and being told you have only 100 words left to speak in your life. Every sentence carries weight. Would you waste them on petty arguments? On proving yourself to someone who isn't even listening? Or would you choose each word carefully, like a warrior sharpening his final blade before battle? Nietzsche understood this. Words are currency. Careless spending devalues them. True power lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Observing first, waiting for the right moment, and responding only when it advances your purpose, that is mastery. The next time you feel the urge to argue, pause. Watch how others reveal their fears, insecurities, and weaknesses. See how they expose themselves without even realizing it. Then, when the moment is right, speak with precision or remain silent. Real power is silent. It is patience. It is the art of influencing without forcing, of winning without appearing to fight, of guiding others to self-realization without shouting. History's greatest minds, philosophers, innovators, warriors, understood this truth. Their strength was never in reaction, but in mastery, observation, and deliberate action. So, pause before speaking. Choose carefully. Control your mind, and you control the world around you. Words are powerful, but silence is strategic. Influence, restraint, and precision, that is where true power lies. If this video has made you see the world differently, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.